Lesson in Survival by Frank Belknap Long. School was out. The dismissal bell tolled, and the children rushed in delight from the classroom and went careening and shouting down garden paths bright with blue and yellow flowers. Overhead, a cheery noonday sun beamed down on the emerging schoolmaster, a tall, dark-haired young man whose eyes followed his retreating charges with a warm and eager gratefulness. Brian Andrews enjoyed teaching, but not on such a day as this. It is a strain to change one's occupation at a moment's notice, but fishing was not an occupation to Brian. It was as natural as breathing. There were red and yellow trout flies pinned to his hat, and a supple bamboo rod had come to life in his hand. He flicked it as he strode along, counting his blessings one by one. He was free and independent and young. He liked his job and the quiet, dreamy little town with its cloistered air of belonging to an earlier, less mechanized age. He liked to cross the village green and to slap the big antique fire bell opposite the war monument, eliciting a hollow boom, and he liked to go padding along Main Street in his moccasin shoes. "There's the new young schoolmaster, a college man, but you'd never think it to look at him." Then there was Jenny Fleming. It hadn't taken him long to get to know Jenny well enough to tease her about her freckles while she unwrapped sandwiches on a shady bank and made light of his attempts to kiss her. He supposed he'd soon have to ride off free and be content to remain resolutely independent. The best thing about the trout stream was its nearness. He had only to cross a deep elbowed road and ascend a red clay bank to plunge into the leafy green solitude of a truly enchanted stretch of woodland. Enchanted in every way. Jenny would be waiting for him with a luncheon basket beside a willow-shadowed pool, and further down the stream the children would be fishing with worms. He was quite sure the laughter of the children wouldn't bring the schoolroom back. It would be the completely natural laughter of youngsters at play, freed for the moment from all adult stuffiness and tyranny. He caught his breath when he actually saw her waiting for him by the pool. She'd removed her stockings and gone wading in the cool, sparkling water, and now she was sitting on the bank, drawing her stockings on again. He went whistling up to her, picked up the lunch basket, and looked inside. "Ham sandwiches," he said. "What could be nicer?" She did not get up to snatch the basket from him and mingle her laughter with his. She simply leaned back against a slanting willow tree, her eyes searching his face in troubled concern. "Sit down, Brian," she said. "I want to talk to you." Surprised, he sat down beside her on the sloping bank. "Hungry men make poor listeners, honey bunch." He smiled in mock distress. "Don't say I didn't warn you." She said without smiling, "Brian, the planes went over again yesterday." All of the levity went out of Brian Andrews' eyes. He stared down at the shadowed pool, his mouth suddenly dry. "I didn't hear them," he said quickly. "I was busy all day." "Not too busy to know that every man, woman, and child in Fairview is under sentence of death. How can you make yourself forget we're living on borrowed time?" "Just a minute now." "It's true, isn't it?" she persisted. "True or false, you've got to shut your mind to it. If you don't, it will darken the sunlight for you." "Is that your secret, Brian? Have you shut your mind?" "I can avoid thinking about it for days at a stretch," he told her. "I keep remembering I came to Fairview to take a teaching job and go fishing and fall in love with you. The simple truth keeps me sane." "How sane, Brian? Subconsciously, you're in bad shape, just as the rest of us are. It doesn't really help not to be honest about it." "You're forgetting what a big country this is," he told her. "The planes can't bomb every isolated village, every tiny cluster of houses. Even if they could, bombing on that scale would boomerang. They'd expose themselves to retaliation on a scale which would make interesting source material for future historians of another intelligent species." She looked at him steadily for a moment, with understanding and a kind of pity, as if she herself had once clung as tenaciously to hope and believed quite as firmly that the smaller villages would be spared. "It may not come tomorrow," she said. "It may not come for a year. Yes, we'll have time to pretend. Tell me, what in the future would you prize most highly? A single long month of waiting, 2?" He said with stubborn pride, "Fairview itself. If we cling with courage to what we have here, we can face the future without fear. That in itself is a victory, perhaps the only true victory mankind can ever know." "We've lived in Fairview too long," she said. "We did not see the danger until it was too late." "What good would seeing the danger have done?" he asked. "We know now that man will never succeed in controlling his own destiny. What would you have had our best minds do?" She laughed suddenly. Her laughter rang out defiant and challenging in the peaceful wood. "Every age brings a new approach to reality, Brian," she answered. "The atomic age brought tools so bright we should have found in them the answer to all of our problems. We should have used our genius to banish war forever." He looked at her, amazed by her vehemence, sensing for the first time a depth of eloquence in her thinking which challenged his own reasoned convictions at a vital point. "You'll have to admit we've tried," he said. "We've tried desperately hard to follow through." "Not hard enough," she said. "A race can only be judged by its success." "Then our race has been judged," he said. "It has failed, and the judgment is in, and nothing can be changed. I still say that Fairview can give us courage." Jenny shook her head. "Only because when you walk in its quiet streets, you think of the men who once struggled to build 10,000 other Fairviews, each new and each different. If you go back and try to stand where your ancestors stood, your illusions will start to crumble." "I take it you don't think Fairview is the answer." He forced laughter into his voice. "I haven't noticed any crumbling. Honestly, I haven't. If I dropped a trout fly lightly on that pool and caught a 2-pounder, my happiness would be complete." "You only think it would. You can never shut out the roar of the plains going over, Brian. We had the tools, but we lacked the boldness to really try." Brian stood up suddenly, staring down at Jenny Fleming, sitting on the bank, the sunlight bright on her berry-brown shoulders. "I still say that Fairview is a positive good in itself." His voice had lost none of its confidence. "We're lucky to be young and in Fairview. Let the great bombers come. Their wings will cast no shadow for me while I can go on remembering there are speckled trout in that pool and that you are very beautiful." "Brian!" "I have my work, and it is good work. Teaching eager young minds to explore the buried past of the earth, to grasp the almost miraculous beauty of its mountains, rivers, and fossils. That's what I like most about Fairview. We still have blackboards. We still have reading, writing, and arithmetic. But you can also start early on the really important things. Every kid in Fairview with an eager, inquiring mind can use the classroom telescope and look out across space at the tunneling stars and the great nebula in Andromeda." "It is good work, Brian, but if Fairview should be bombed—" He bent suddenly and helped her to her feet. "Fairview will not be bombed," he said. She laid a finger on his lips. "We've argued enough," she said. He nodded in quick agreement. "Come on, let's dance." "If we had some music—" "We'll dance anyway. Shall we make it a waltz?" "All right, Brian." It was no more than a faint, distant humming at first, like the drowsy murmur of bees in a noonday glade. Bees, drowsy with nectar, too sluggish to be dangerous. They danced on the cool bank, around and around, in mock solemnity, hardly aware of the sound, never associating it with danger until it was suddenly thunderous in their ears. They looked up then and saw the flight of jet bombers screaming across the sky, huge and vulture black and wobbling a little with the weight of their bomb loads. They looked up and saw the bomb descending. Incredibly tiny, it seemed like a flickering dust mote that persisted in its dancing until the sun's glare claimed it. They flattened themselves just as the silence gave way to a rumbling and then to a roaring. There were flashes of light between the trees, a vast flickering, a reddening of the entire forest. Then silence again, complete, mind-numbing. In stunned horror, Brian raised himself and saw Jenny Fleming's limp body lying motionless at his feet. He was aware of pain and a tumultuous stirring deep within his own body, as if something imprisoned in his flesh were struggling furiously to free itself. Shivering, he closed his eyes, then opened them quickly. The body of his companion had begun to shatter, to break into many gleaming pieces. Like a brittle mold of over-hardened clay, it crumbled and flew apart, the arms splintering into fragments, the face separating itself from the rest of the head and rolling down the bank into the pool. The face did not immediately sink, but continued to stare up mask-like for an instant through a deepening film of water, as if puzzled by something it could not quite understand. From the fragments on the bank, a long, glistening shape crawled, its bulging, many-faceted eyes probing the forest gloom. Had there been human eyes to watch, the shape would have seemed to move with a dignity and grace absurd in a creature so lowly. But there were no human eyes in the forest shadows, neither were there human ears to hear it say, "The play is over, Chickamauga. You are inflicting upon yourself quite unnecessary torment." The creature paused, then went on. "You gave a magnificent performance. You lived the part as it was meant to be lived." Chickamauga awoke to reality then, completely. He detached himself from the many manipulative props controlling the eyes, lips, vocal organs, and limbs of the artificial man-body and crawled swiftly forth. For a moment he lay motionless in the shadows, his many-faceted eyes acknowledging with pleasure the admiration of his teaching associate, Raka Klaken. Then he moved with a dignity and a grace peculiarly masculine to the edge of the stage and stared down over the bright lights at his student audience. The students were just beginning to stir, to awaken as he had done from the bright, compelling magic of the stage to prosaic reality. They lay motionless in their classroom tunnels, a glistening sea of upturned heads and supine bodies packed so closely into the vast hall they seemed almost to be one great crawling organism. Chickamauga stared down with a deep satisfaction. The drama reconstruction had taken many days of patient research, but certainly it had been worth the effort. In education, there could be no substitute for the archaeological drama, acted out when the characters were those of a long-vanished intelligent species debating great issues of survival. The historical lesson could not fail to be spectacularly highlighted. The masterpiece of reconstruction, truly a masterpiece. He thought of the sound recordings of man-speech excavated from caverns in the earth, sealed from within by a heat so terrific it had melted the surface rocks. He remembered how difficult it was to preserve all of the semantic overtones and fine shadings when such recordings were revamped as passages of dramatic dialogue couched in the infinitely more subtle speech idioms of a more advanced species. He looked about the immense revolving stage, and in his mind's eye saw the schoolhouse once more turned toward the audience and himself emerging in the artificial man-body, the smaller bodies with their child actors skipping away before him into the woods. He had lived the man part so completely he had actually believed in the village all through the play. The village had existed as a richly experienced reality in his own mind, and in that way he had made the village seem real to the audience, had saved the extra cost of an actual stage reconstruction. Even without the village, the schoolhouse and the stretch of woodland had made the production a costly one. But surely, it had been worth the cost. his students now knew more about the last days of man than they could have learned from 20 or 30 carefully prepared lectures. Chikamaka's eyes quivered, and he half arose on his 20th pair of legs, assuming an almost man-like posture on the stage. It seemed only fitting to him that at the end of such a play, a species that had conquered should thus pay its respects to a species that had passed.